The Department of Housing and Urban Development is rolling out a nationwide hotline for residents to directly report criminals, gang members, traffickers, and anyone here illegally and living in taxpayer-funded housing.
We want to take good care of the most vulnerable people in our country, and that means making sure that residents in HUD-funded housing can live their lives in peace and security, free from the horrors of violent crime. Illegal aliens have no place in public housing. It's outrageous that people who should not be here come across our borders and now usurp spots and housing units that should support American people.
This comes as the president says he will permanently pause migration from all third world countries after the deadly shooting of National Guardsmen in D.C. on Wednesday. Taylor, you talk a lot about your experience near public housing in New York. You know, this hotline thing to me, my first reaction is, did this not exist before?
Yeah.
I mean, this is great, but why haven't we been able to do this before?
You know, my initial gut reaction was, if you see something, say something. Remember how successful that slogan was post 9/11? I see it everywhere. I know it. I remember it. It's catchy. And I thought, if that sort of thing could catch on post 9/11 and has been helpful in terms of truly when I see like a bag at the airport, like I say something now. I feel like it's my civic duty. So I do wonder if this can sort of have that hope of a similar catchphrase where people feel like it is their civic duty to, I love reporting the gang members and the violence because that's where a lot of the, at least in my former neighborhood, the sad thing was all the shootings happened within the housing complex. So even though I lived across the street, I actually felt safe because the cops kept saying, unfortunately, the shooting is within there because all the gang activity happens within there. They're not crossing the street. So if this could be sort of a civic duty to report crime, I like it.
So, it brings up the issue of enforcement. So you call, hotlines, you call hotlines, they're gonna have a problem. You never get through. If you get through, nobody ever does anything. And then if there's the enforcement issues already with places like this, is HUD gonna be able to do anything on that front?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I also feel, to take the pessimistic view on this, in certain communities, there is this notion of snitches get stitches. So I look at this and I'm like, that's great. But how many neighbors are going to be calling? It's real, guys. The first thing I thought when I saw this was like, how many people are actually going to call and snitch on their neighbors? It is very difficult. There's a lot of police outreach that is done in communities like that because people don't want to speak up. So I worry about the ability. Then you have the actual hotline. Yes. How do they answer and how do they process it? Because also, people love to complain about their neighbors. So if Sally's been loud, because if Jackie can hear the tree sucking up the sap, I'm sure she's hearing Sally next door. And so how do you vet if things are actually a problem or if it's just people complaining about their neighbors? So that's not to say, boo-hoo, we shouldn't do it. But I do think there are two issues with this program that will kind of struggle to make it successful.
I like it. I like it because they need help. I agree with you on snitches get stitches. And it goes back to Brian's thing about the hotline. You call up and what's going to happen. The good thing about this is it's somebody's place of residence, so presumably they're going to keep returning there day after day. It's not like an instantaneous reporting of a crime where you need to apprehend a suspect all at once. But I think people will call because the new number that's being floated now is 30 million illegals have gotten into this country over the course of the last 4 years under the Biden administration, 30 million. We sit here and we talk about housing shortages. We talk about supply that isn't on the market. And people will turn around and say, oh, but the houses you're talking about aren't the ones that the illegal migrants are buying. Okay, let's talk about houses that are, sub 500,000. They might be buying them. They also are renters. They also are using this public housing. And we have a massive problem in the rental market with rents skyrocketing. Yeah, because 30 million people came. Where did they go? Some of them got government assistance. Some of them had to go find a place to live. So, we've got to do something about this. And as I've always said, there's a certain amount of this illegal immigration that was baked into the cake. It worked in the system because we needed the workers. Nobody really said anything. They looked the other way. When the Biden administration opened up the floodgates and decided to let 30 million people in the country, they went way too far and created a situation where Trump now has to crack down on immigration like we have never seen before. And you've got problems like this arising too.
Right.
Well, and thank you for admitting or for acknowledging that this hotline isn't really about reporting crime. This is about reporting undocumented, so-called illegal people.
Well, it's for both, actually, I think.
Yeah, well,
trafficking, drug dealing, and illegal.
Okay.
I would think that 911 used to be the hotline you'd call if you saw a crime, but I guess, we need a replacement for 911. I mean, I'm an outlier here because I'm actually not against necessarily illegals using public housing. I'm against public housing writ large. I mean, it is not government's role to provide housing for anyone. So I'd like to see government get out of the public housing business writ large. And if we need more housing built, get rid of some of those NIMBY laws, encourage developers, encourage more housing stock. But I mean, I grew up in Chicago around a lot of public housing projects, and they were terrible. They were, hotbeds of crime. So I'd like to see less public housing overall, not just necessarily less.
Well, I do think this is one way to make that happen. I mean, if you want less public housing, let's talk about people who are abusing that system, right? I mean, if you're here illegally, you're in that housing. President Trump said, especially after the D.C. shooting this week, he said we're going to permanently pause migration from all third world countries. We're just going to permanently or permanently pause, I guess. We'll see if it comes back. But he's basically saying shut off the spigot, John.
You have to. You have to let the system heal. Again, the extreme was so far that in order to try to make some sense of this or correct it in any way, you have to just shut it all down and reset.
He's going to get
a lot of flack for it. I know.
So much flack for that, Madison.
Yeah,
Is it worth it?
I think the other side, I'm taking the other side in all of this. I was down at the border, and it was a lot of people from Venezuela, when we know that country is struggling so hard. So I think if you completely shut off immigration, obviously the Trump administration doing a much better job at the border, but if you're telling multiple nations there's no way you're getting into the U.S., people will find a way into the U.S. We have a better enforcement down at the southern border, but I do think if you say we're closing it down, period, you're going to see people trying to sneak in, because if there's no legal pathway, I just think it will still happen because people desperately want to be in the United States.
They want to be here, that's true, but the question is, how do they get here and what effects does it have on our country?
No, I absolutely agree. I just think if you completely shut it down, people that are really struggling will still find a way in.
Well, they'll try. I agree with you, although the Trump administration's done a pretty good job
Much better.
of shutting that down.
From Biden border to today, it is a different world.
I just say this last thought. The left uses chaos to achieve their goals. And then when the right tries to be aggressive about enforcing the law, they say that's chaos.
Right.
Yep.
And it's such an asymmetry, and you can't listen to the abusive language because chaos begets these problems, and the enforcement of law is what fixes them.